Okay, we'll go ahead and get this meeting started tonight. If everybody can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda? We have council's approval of the agenda,
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
and I'll second that. Roll call, please.
Councilman Vosberg,
Aye.
Mayor Horn,
Aye.
Councilman Hedgecock, Councilman Schindler,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez.
Okay, next, section 2, item awards, presentations, appointments, and proclamations. We have none. Item number 3, citizens' comments. This section of the agenda allows members of the public to address the city council on any item within the jurisdiction of the council. Members of the public, when recognized by the mayor, should come forward to the lectern, identify themselves, and use the microphone. Comments are normally limited to 3 minutes in accordance with state open meeting laws. No actions will be taken by the city council this evening, and all items will be referred to staff for a follow-up and a report. Citizens' comments submitted in writing to the city clerk by 5 p.m. on the day of the city council meeting shall be distributed to the city council and included in the record. However, they will not be read. We have any comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4, public hearing. Which section are we going to run this under? This item, okay. We have none for tonight for public hearings. Consent calendar, we have none. Item number 6, ordinance presentation, discussion, potential action items. We have one item tonight.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and provide a little background on Measure J just for anyone who's not familiar with it. So on June 14th, 2018, Coalinga City Council adopted resolution number 3820 calling for a municipal election to submit to the voters a local ballot measure adopting a 1% transaction and use tax, also known as a sales tax. And that was to fund city services, including police and fire protection and other general services, and requesting the Board of Supervisors of Fresno County to consolidate a municipal election on a local measure with other elections to be held on November 6, 2018. The 1% sales tax became known as Measure J. On September 20th, 2018, the Coalinga City Council adopted Resolution 3862, providing a declaration of intent for expenditures related to the Measure J revenues. Within those, there were 11 items. 1 was to hire 3 additional firefighter paramedics. 2 was to reinstate 10 reserve firefighter positions. 3 was to hire 2 additional police officers. 4 was to reactivate the police investigations unit. 5 was to make upgrades to the city's emergency command center. 6 was to hire additional public safety personnel. 7 was to purchase a building-wide UPS system. That's an uninterruptible power supply. 8 was to pay fair wages to employees. 9 was to hire a deputy fire chief. 10 was to improve recruitment, retention, and employee morale. And 11 was to institute a financial reserve. These priorities were to be addressed within the 10-year time frame of Measure J. All have been accomplished as written or by a variation. Some were one-time costs, while others require ongoing funding. On November 6, 2018, Measure J passed, and the sales tax went into effect April 1st of 2019 and sunsets on April 1st, 2029. So this item's on the agenda because council provided direction that you would like to move forward with placing a measure on the ballot this November to extend Measure J. So we need to hear from the community on if you would like to extend Measure J with a sunset, if you'd like to extend Measure J without a sunset, if you would like to extend Measure J, what some of your priorities would be for how that money would be spent. There is money that's tied up in ongoing costs. So like when we hired additional police officers and additional firefighters, those are ongoing costs. So that money is already allocated for that. But some of the items in the initial priorities were one-time costs. So there's some opportunity to do new things if Measure J gets extended. If Measure J does not pass, then we lose the revenue that we have on Measure J, which means that many of those positions would likely have to go away because there's not another funding source to cover those costs. Right now, for the current fiscal year, we anticipate receiving about 2.1 million in Measure J revenue. So I just want to say, I know that someone had asked if I was going to have a list of what staff had as priorities, and that's not our goal tonight. Our goal is just to hear from the community on what they'd like to see, and then hopefully at the end of this, the direction from the council would be to bring back a resolution with priorities that you can consider. So it would be items that were requested by the community, from council, from staff, and we can bring that back and you can discuss it and place the items on that you're interested in moving forward with.
As somebody who has voted against everything that adds money to my tax bill in the past and not knowing what the money went to, I think we need to make sure that the community knows how much this has impacted our community. I've seen some videos on other communities where they put on their police cars and fire trucks, you know, funded by, one of them was Measure E in that community. So that might be something that we do here to, I mean, I haven't seen it, but I mean, yeah, to where people can see it. And when you don't know, it's hard to spend money on what you don't know what's going to. So something I was thinking about.
So, can we set the decorum status of how this is going to run? Because I know that we have two members of the public here, but I don't want them to feel like they have to, you know, how are they going to be responding and whatnot? Because this is kind of a workshop forum, right? So what, do they just raise their hand and the mayor will acknowledge them and then we'll hand them the microphone? Okay.
Okay, would any one of you guys like to speak on it?
Hi, my name's Chuck. I've lived in this town for close to 30 years, 30 plus. I'd like to see it extended with the sunset, but I know I'm going to be driving around looking at different things to see what I believe that the money should go towards. I like to see some sort of list of, like the one-time deal like this last time, to see what would benefit the city. I'm definitely interested in the city. I've been here a long time. I feel more of a Klinger resident than San Diego, where I came from, because I've been here so long. So I'm definitely interested in, I'm pro-fire, pro-police. I'm all for that and what else we can do.
It's being recorded, so we still have to do it.
My name's Tom Dominguez. What I'd like to see is the way the measure was written in 2018, it was successful because it was well written. When you have these kind of measures on the ballot, they fail because they're not well written. In order to make this successful, again, for the upcoming ballot, it needs to be just as clear. Everything needs to be laid out. It's basically a sales pitch. This is what we have. This is what we want. This is what we can do with what we expect to take in. So I'd also like to see a sunset. That's me as a homeowner. But I still lean on that public safety side because that's my background. Tie this into every department's strategic plan, 3 years for the chief, 5 years for the fire department. It all ties back in, so there's a track record, and that makes the public feel secure. They don't feel tricked. They don't see a bait and switch, and they're always in favor, or they tend to remain in favor of the next ballot measure, the next request for more funding, the next increase in taxes. Thank you.
All right, so I agree with, you guys can keep that one down there. That way you'll have one. So I would like to see the number of how much the one-time costs were that we spent on the other stuff, so we kind of have an idea. Because the personnel that we've put in, I think we need to let the public know how much and also know how much it is in personnel costs that Measure J has, so that we're very transparent with the public in stating, okay, this is the personnel that's been funded by Measure J, this is how much money it costs, and then we'll know how much money, we'll get an estimate about how much money the one-time stuff is. That way we can move forward on, and I think that the number one thing that we're going to need on this is the public buy-in. And so I think that in order to get that, I think that maybe just one workshop isn't going to be enough. I think we're going to need to take the info from the workshop and make it a working workshop where it continues. One thing I'd like to see is the city to send out a survey to the public and ask them what one-time projects they would like to see us do, because that's how we get buy-in, as we ask the public, if we were to extend Measure J, what would you like to see? That way that we can take those and then come back and say, okay, well, then we can discuss it more. I mean, we have, 2 members of the public here right now, plus, our members of service. A lot of times, these things, people don't really know, or they don't really want to attend right off the bat. But then once the discussion gets started, then people are more interested to start hearing about it. And then I really want to make sure that the public knows that, hey, like, this isn't an increase. Because I already had someone today say, well, all I think of is that you guys just want to tax me more. And I said, no, this isn't that. This is the halfway point. And in order for the fire department and the police department to have a strategic plan, which I've been adamant that we need one, they need to know, how many years they have left. And if it's left a 5-year point and that's at the time where they can start, thinking about the things they need, then it's going to be important to know that we're going to move forward after that. And then I'd also like, to make sure the public realizes that something that the last, I would say, 2 councils have done that haven't been done in the past was they made it an important thing to make sure that we have retention of services from our people that work here at the city, from everyone that works here, not just public safety, but public safety is extremely important. But in order to keep people, in order to keep our services that we have to plan for increases in wages. You have to. There's no other way, or else people are going to go somewhere else. So I think the last 2 councils have been they've done a great job at making sure that we plan for that type of thing, along with the city manager, finance, and all of the chiefs and everyone that's here. And I want to see that moving forward. So I want to know what that number looks like, after the 2029. And I know that might take a little bit of work on your guys' part to figure that out. But we have to include that so that we're completely transparent with the public, so the public knows, hey, we plan on some wage increases in the future. Obviously you have to, because before that, when I got on council, no one had a raise in almost 12 years. That's just not, that's not doable. You can't do that. We had a very high turnover ratio. We lost a lot of people that were really good employees. And then also we want to make sure that we don't ever go back into that debt hole that we were in. And everyone needs to realize that due to the state, the cannabis industry is in dire trouble. And this isn't not our fault. They aren't coming and saying, hey, because of your taxes that we can't operate. They're coming and saying because the rules at the state and the way they're treated. I talked to someone the other day that said, isn't it interesting that the state allows all of the black market people to operate no problem, but yet the people that are paying their taxes, and those are the people they're going after. That doesn't even make sense. Like, hey, the people that are trying to be good actors, the ones that are on their radar, putting up their hands, saying we want to do good, those are the ones that are being micromanaged by the state. But the entire black market is just like a free reign. So because of that, we're losing money in taxes and we're losing businesses, because they can't pay their rent, or they can't pay, the state taxes. The state yanks their license. So that, knowing that, I mean, we need to plan for that as well and say, hey, in the next budget cycles, if we're going to be losing money, it's even more important to understand where that loss is, so that we can make up for it, because with the Measure J money. And so I think the mayor has some numbers on Measure J, and we've done pretty good. So that's all I have for the moment. Hopefully some other people have some ideas and whatnot.
Yeah, me personally, I think the way that Measure J's been working so far, I believe we need to get it to where it no longer has a sunset. It's not going to add any additional tax. It's just going to extend it out permanently. So that way we don't have to keep bringing it back every 10 years, because in 10 years it might go up. And I'd rather it not go up. I'd rather it stay the same now permanently. That way it's always 1%. The entire city staff has benefited from this. The entire city has benefited from this. They're seeing more policing. They're seeing more fire trucks. They're seeing the officers all around. The public works staff has grown quite a bit. New equipment, new trucks that have finally been updated that were old 25 plus years. I think our ladder truck was 35 years old and we finally got to replace it. So, and then in the future, we should be able to keep up with a lot of this stuff with having these funds in. Our estimated, when they originally did this Measure J, we're actually doing really, really good compared to what the projections were. We're actually have doubled to date what the expectation was per year. So that's why we've been able to get our staff and the equipment and tools for each one of these employees to utilize their job, for their job. I think it needs to continue without a sunset, if possible. But it needs to be explained to the citizens, because the first time it went around, Measure C, it was a flop because it didn't get explained completely to the citizens. City of Coalinga got outvoted by a state hospital, the patients that are there. And the second time around, when it switched to Measure J, was a completely different story. It went from just under, I think, roughly 500-600 votes for the year to roughly 3,000 votes. We had a vote of 1,728 voters voted yes for this. 1,240 said no. And I can almost guarantee it that at least 400 of them were from the state hospital, which put us up. We've been able to get quite a few things done. A lot of upgrades around the city, things that we have in the works. Some of our water infrastructure, we've been able to use the money to upgrade it because it's been 40, 50 years since any of it's been upgraded. So it's due time. And if we continue this, we can still keep continuing to keep that money in our savings to pay for the bigger projects that are extremely necessary for the city to be able to continue. Without it, we have no water, we have no gas, we have nothing. So we're trying to do it this way, so that way we're not going back and charging the citizens more every month. This way it's just one straight across, and it keeps their bills down low enough. It's not as low as we'd all like it to, because we're paying the same bill as everybody else. But it would be nice if we didn't have to keep doing that. We could utilize the money in another way. So that's what I think.
It's a tough one for me. I think it needs to sunset because the public needs to be polled at least every 5 to 10 years to find out where they're at on the spending. And then I would ask the question, if it didn't, how would you decide how the money is spent on the extra projects down the road? You know, there would have to be something put into place where the public would be part of that process. I think it's necessary. Without it, the city is going to suffer greatly. But it has to be well thought out. Like Lonnie said, advertisement, how it's being used now currently, how it's going to continue to be used, what's going to continue to use it for, and then the projects have to be sold. Like he said, you know, it's got to be explained very clearly. So these are the things I think we need to really look at, work on.
And that could also be an annual thing with the Measure J money. You know, showing people what it's going for. If there's different projects and we're doing it every year and we have stuff come up, this is what we get to do this year with it. Mm-hmm. You know, something I've been talking about with y'all is patting yourself on the back when you do stuff good. showing the public what's happening with their money. We're all a team. You know, if you live here, you're part of the community, you're part of the business. It has to be successful for everybody to live here and have a nice life. We all have to work together, so keeping everybody informed on that would be a good thing.
So unfortunately, I was involved in both the Measure P and the Measure J. And, you know, we learned from the first version of it. And the first version, we didn't do a lot of outreach to the public, informing them on different things. And the second time around, we asked the public, and we did actually get quite a few people that attended. And I'm always in favor of checks and balances too. And one of the things that the public requested that was very hard on a lot of the people was that it had a sunset. And it wasn't that we were going to lose people that were that we were going to gain people. It wasn't the difference of people that were saying, you know, no, I'm never going to vote for this. It was the people that said, you know what, I might vote for this if it had a sunset. But the people who were a yes were a solid yes, and the people that were a complete no were a solid no. But there was that deviating point, and I didn't hear anybody that said, hey, if you take out the sunset, I'd be willing to vote for it. What I heard was people that said, if you put the sunset in, I'll be willing to vote for it. That was what we heard. And that's what cities and towns are hearing, California statewide. Because a lot of times, I mean, I pay attention to these tax measures. Hanford's having the darndest time trying to get something passed over there. They just keep, and so is Lemoore. And Kalinga has been successful. Parlier's been successful. Sanger's been successful. And I think the sunset is a needed thing for the check and balances of the citizens. I also agree with Councilman Hedgecock that I mean, and we really do pretty much bring back a list and tell people what we've done. That's been a thing because council asks for it. But I do think it should maybe be an annual thing, to where at a certain time we come back and tell them, hey, this is what we've spent on. And I really like the idea of putting the stuff on the side of the vehicles or to something. You know, everyone that has a project that's either state funded, it always says funded with this or funded with that. And it kind of lets you know, like, where that money went, you know. And so I'm all in favor of that as well. I'll let the chief go ahead.
I was just going to say, we already have them. So the engine, the ladder, and the brush truck all say funded by Measure J, and I added that when I got here in 2020, and then with all the new purchases that were funded by Measure J, it says them on them. So they're already on there on our equipment, and and 2 ambulances too, right? And there's
Is that also including all the city work trucks as well? Has it been put on those yet?
Measure J was primarily all police and fire. There was no public works, water, anything.
Some of it wasn't put in the general fund? 100%, okay.
I'm guessing, though, that the public works funds paid for their equipment, though, right? So there wasn't a subsidy from general fund?
It comes all from water, sewer, gas, and streets.
Okay, yeah.
Really, that you see, that's primarily public works, has historically always been
Well, and
a ratepayers, right?
we could put out a survey and we could ask the public what they think. I think that's a needed thing. We have to do that, step one. We have to ask the public what they want. Do you guys, what kind of stuff do you want? What does a sunset mean to you? Does a sunset, you know, maybe the public's opinions changed since then. I'm not trying to dictate what the public thinks. I'm interested to know. I know for myself, personally, that I like to have the check and a balance there. And I think if we're doing a good job, and I think if we're telling the public what's going on, if we're being transparent, I think that the public will agree and they'll continue forward, especially if we tell them, hey, what's all tied around this? You know, how many jobs do we have tied around Measure J? And I know it's a lot. And how much, you know, I can just see a difference, a huge difference before we had Measure J and after. Now, granted, we had a huge economic crisis that Measure J was a great solver in that. And the reason, one of the things why we have a lot of that extra money is because when you go to the store, when something's $1 and you're paying, you know, an extra percent on it, you're getting that, what is it? You know, if it's 1%, it'd be $1.07, right? That's about right. And then if that same item now is $5, guess what? We're getting more sales tax money too. So that money expands with the growth of and the inflation. the other part to look about that is that now things cost more. So now we got to buy more. And so what's the difference in between those two? How much money, compared to how much money we're taking in, compared to the inflation, how we're able to, hopefully gather some, not go to the far end of the extreme on the price scale, but I don't want people to get the idea that, hey, you've taken in all this money and like you guys may not need it, because prices have went up. And I mean, we see that all the time when we're going to try and purchase something. Some of these projects we're working on, now granted, a lot of them may not be Measure J money, but look at the water tank project, right? Quadrupled in price since we started the idea of it. So just need the public to, I wish more people were here. That way that they could be involved in knowing how important it is for us in making decisions, that we know what they want. And so if we can't get them to come to this meeting, maybe a next meeting, or maybe we engage them with a survey. And if we're going to do this, no matter what, we need to make sure that we put out the same information that we did last time. How we spent the money to send out information to people. They did phone calls. They called people on the phone. They told them, they asked them questions. Then they informed them about what Measure J would do, and then what would happen if we didn't have it. And I think those things are important, because if we don't do that, then the public is left to wonder for themselves what is going to happen. And a lot of rumors get started, a lot of things, and this type of information by the city can really help. And so I would suggest that we make sure that we do a survey to find out what the citizens want. And then once council decides whether or not we're going to have a sunset or not, then we also, after we decide if we're going to decide to put it on the ballot, then we also follow that up with information to make sure that the public is informed. And I'm guessing you're like, well, you guys haven't given us any ideas on things that you want, because we don't know what the number of one-time money is. We don't know what the amount of money that we're spending on personnel is. And once we get those numbers, then we still need to go back and think about it and say, okay, and ask our constituents of, hey, what do you think? And then at the same time, asking the public.
So we have sort of a time crunch to do all that. I believe it's maybe like the first week of June or something. I'm looking at Shannon to see if she can nod her head. So around the first week of June, we have to have like the full resolution already approved and to the county. So we can do a survey. We can actually get a survey out fairly quickly. Unfortunately, most people don't return surveys. We've tried doing them by mail. We've tried doing them electronically. We have very low participation in things. It's still worth doing because we'd get a response from more people than came tonight, but it's going to be a low response. And then we need, I guess, just general ideas, because it's going to come back as a discussion item. So if there's things that you think, maybe we need to look at allocating money for animal control, or maybe we need improvements in a specific park. It doesn't have to be a dollar amount, because as staff, we have to get that information and bring it back to you. But we're just looking for general ideas of how you'd like to see the money spent. And then if council so directs us, we'll take the information that we have tonight along with anything that staff has, and then bring it to you for a discussion item at a council meeting.
Well, I'd like to see improvements with animal control for sure. We have a lot of areas around town where we've promoted walking, but yet we don't have anywhere for anyone to put the things that they're supposed to be picking up when they walk their dog. That'd be a great thing to have, is a place to put that stuff.
You want more trash cans?
I guess if that's what you want to call them. I mean, we need something to deal with that. I'd like to see not just to see, additions to the parks we have, but I'd like to see like more parks. Like, we have areas of town that don't have any parks. Where I live, there is no park. We have no park at all. I just think that's the most ridiculous thing that's ever happened, that someone was allowed to build and not put in a park. But other areas of town, no problem, we got parks. And so I'd like to see another park. I'd also like to see any improvements that we can do towards economic development. If that means purchasing some properties out there that would be, I don't want to say exactly which ones, but in areas of high visibility, that way that we could promote that to the people when you guys go out to your things, and because people ask, what property do you have? What property is available, and then the airport. The airport's another thing that I think should be on the priority list. Maybe we research and figure out how to, get some warehousing out there for people. Maybe there's an ability to buy the property next to it and try and expand it. Those are all ideas that economic development, animal control, improving public safety, and then park and recreation. Those things I think would be things the public would be interested in. But I want to hear the public to see what they have to say. And I think if you're going to go survey route, that the digital survey is the easiest one for people to do, because it gets sent out to them. They can just fill out the information, send it back. I'm not saying don't do the one that you can mail in, because not everyone has, Facebook, or not everyone has a digital access point. We want to make sure we get everyone involved. That's just my opinion, though.
If I might speak about the surveys for just 1 second. The most popular survey was about 290 responses. We could also send flyers like in the mail with like a thing to scan, and we would very likely have a lot more. Yeah. It's about 3,000 to 4,000 to send out mailers to everyone.
And then make sure you actually put a website on there too, because some people don't know how to use a QR code. And then some of the older phones just won't do it. So make sure that we have a web presence on there so that, they know where to go. But I think that's a great idea, Larry, to make sure that we have something sent out to people, and then QR code or website, that way they can get there. And then the chamber we can work with our partners like the chamber and the school and people like that. And that's another thing. Maybe we ask the school too. We ask the people at the schools and the park and rec things that they might be interested in. That they have ideas too. I mean, the dog park was kind of something that came from a partnership between us,
So between now and June's meeting in the first of the month, we've got 4 meetings in between. So how many meetings will we need to figure this out? 2 or 3?
We might need some special meetings in between there. I think that the deadline, we would have 4 meetings, because that first meeting in June is graduation day, so it got moved to June 13th. So we'd have to have it to the county before then. So we'd just have the 2 meetings in April, which the April 4th agenda is already done, and so we wouldn't have anything on there. So there would only be 3 meetings that we could discuss it at that are scheduled. But if we did the survey and we were able to get it drafted and sent out, maybe not this upcoming week, but the following week, mail is fairly slow right now. It takes on average about 10 days when I send something for someone to receive it here. So we would have to give them at least until the end of April. And I mean, even then, that's only giving them like a week to complete it. So we would definitely need both meetings in May to have this item on the agenda. But we don't have to necessarily have their priorities, because the resolution is just to tell the county that we want it on the ballot and if it's going to have a sunset or not. The priorities we can do even into June or July.
Well, and in that survey, I'd also like to get an idea, since we don't want to waste paper, ask the idea if they're highly against or highly in favor of it, and we get a number 1 through 5 to see where the public is, because, like we spoke earlier, it does cost money to put these things on, and if we're going to spend money sending out paperwork to people, we may as well ask them how they feel at the same time. That way we can see that, because I understand what you're saying about, we don't need to turn the priority list in, but we do want to get an idea from the public. And so by having them turn that survey in, one, they're getting buy-in because they're telling us what it is that they would want, and if we send them out there, and we also want to understand, like, who is against this and why would they be against it? because that will give us an idea of maybe things that we need to change. Beforehand, it was the sunset, but maybe there's other things that people want to change, you know? I just want to make sure that we get a full approach on this. That way that once we do it, we understand where we're going.
So, is there a way we can have another special meeting and try to get one in April, if possible, and then possibly one, maybe two in May? That way we can try to keep ahead of it.
Yeah, we can add any special meetings that we need to.
And then also, every piece of literature that goes out, I think needs to, right in the very first line, may have the public understand that we're extending Measure J. Because I've already talked to people and they're thinking that we're going to re-tax them and the taxes are going to increase. And so I want to make that very apparent to people that that's not what this is about. This is being able to plan for the future. And we have fire department that's already going to work on a 5-year plan. And how are they going to work on anything after that, or even know if they're going to be able to be sustainable if we don't have this funding? And then hoping the police department can do the same thing. I know that it's hard with public agencies to try and figure this stuff out, but this is something that I think that all of us would like to see.
That would help with the equipment purchases, huge, in both departments.
And ask Public Works if you can, wastewater and water, if what wants they're needing as well for the future. So I know they just got a backhoe, but the other ones that they have are uncabbed, and I believe they would get another one if they could, because some of the piping, they're having to be in 2 places at once.
And question, Sean, we can spend general fund money for public works, correct? Of course. Because I know that a lot of times when we go for this, we're like, okay, well, we'd have money in the equipment fund, or we have money for these types of things. But later down the road, they end up in bonds and increased pricing for rates. So I agree with the mayor that absolutely ask them, so that if there's something that maybe they need that could be covered in Measure J as well, that could be something that wouldn't have to be pushed on down the road.
So I believe that staff has direction, unless there's anything that anyone else wants to add. We can bring back some information. We'll prepare the survey and get that out electronically and by mail. And then if anybody has any ideas that you think of after the fact and you want to email them to me, and we'll just have this as an ongoing item on all of the agendas, and we'll throw a few special meetings in between if we need to.
Hey, I got an idea. How hard would it be for someone to add a portion onto the website, or just to add a comment section to where that if somebody had some info that they were interested in, they could just submit it and hit the submit button? And I know Larry's up there, and he's the one.
I'm thinking.
Can we add a button to the app, maybe?
Yeah.
But
Basically, if you can submit an inquiry.
Yeah,
and
that way
then
that-
it can go to a main mailbox. I don't know where you want that email
It
to
can
go.
go to me.
It can go to Marissa.
That way that it would fill the solution that you're talking about, but it would also include the public.
So instead of a pothole, you have a Measure J question.
There it is.
Do the same kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
We can figure something out. Yeah, make some time.
Great.
Download it.
Just a quick question. What would it take to have
Please.
a booth, not that the city is swimming in people sitting around not doing anything, but just like have an information booth like in front of Tractor Supply, that if people ask questions, they can go up there and what's this about? What can we do? Where, like in high traffic areas. I know Save Mart's kind of iffy, but why not like Tractor Supply, or, because I know you guys are working on the kiosk here. I've been going to city council meetings. And just so people could just walk up and just ask questions and see what could be answered, or their comments, concerns, or whatever.
Yeah, so we can definitely do that. There's a very thin line that we have to walk because we can't say like vote yes on Measure J. All we can do is provide factual information. Our bargaining units are allowed to say vote yes on Measure J, and they're allowed to try to convince people to vote in favor of something, but as city staff, all we can do is provide information. And maybe we could do something like the Derby. I know there are a lot of people from out of town, but there's also a lot of in-town people that go to the Derby. It would be too late to do surveys there, but we may be able to just be out there and have information and do that at some of the community events. We may catch more people that way than like out in front of Save Mart. But yeah, I mean, as long as we're just providing information, it would be fine.
So I guess that actually leads to another question. And I don't know if there is union representation here, but maybe someone could speak for them if they knew. Are the police and fire unions in favor, and the general unions also, are they in favor of extending Measure J, or do we not know?
So I would say that they're all in favor of it because they all have positions tied to it, and so they're not gonna wanna lose bodies. But no, we don't have anyone here, and it's something that we would be discussing with them privately, not in an open meeting.
Okay.
More so than police and firefighters getting the benefit. More so than police and firefighters getting the benefit if the measure passes, but rather you have to refocus that on how the community benefits with those. Yes, that's what you have to target. You gotta spell that out.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It not only affects the city departments, it affects the citizens as well. It benefits everybody in one way or another. Now, have you gotten to a point, Chief, where your facility has outgrown the employees yet? And do you have an expectation of when it could possibly happen?
We're way past it, to be honest with you, and that's something we're working on.
So
and
maybe that's
we're
something
struggling
you can
with. Yeah.
put in for too.
Yeah. I was going to touch on the question that Councilman Vosberg had about the bargaining units. I can tell you internally that the Firefighters Association is ready to put boots on the ground and knock and talk. So they've already brought it up to me.
Well, that was essential because whereas the public may not always trust city councils that come and go, they absolutely, I think, for the most part, trust public safety that are in charge of making sure the safety of the community. And so that's an important thing for me to understand. So I appreciate that.
Anything else, you guys? Anything else from any one of the rest of the staff? Not yet? Okay. Okay, I think is that enough for you guys to kind of go by?
Yeah, do you want me to do a quick recap for Tina in case she has anything she wants to add? Okay. Are you sure? Okay.
Well, in that case, let me hear.
This is the one time you won't have to tell him to be quiet. I can promise you. He keeps on it pretty good because I hear from him all the time.
So we were talking about Measure J. It's scheduled to sunset in 2029, so we have 5 years left. And we're talking about placing it back on the ballot this November. And so we're trying to gauge from the public of if you feel that it should have a sunset. So if it gets extended, maybe it gets extended another 10 years, or if it's not worth extending it because every time that we put it on the ballot, we have to pay the county to put it on the ballot. And so that money could be spent somewhere else if it just went indefinitely. And then the other thing was just hearing from the community about what you would like to see money spent on if Measure J does renew. So some of the things that were brought up were new park space, economic development, money spent at the warehouse, at the airport, such as on warehouses, looking at buying the property out by the airport, and some equipment purchases for all city departments. And we're gonna do a digital survey and a survey by mail that will go out to everybody so that they can have some input. Oh, and also improvements for animal control, and then more trash cans along the community for when people are out walking their dogs.
Well, some of it with them walking the dogs, that's one of the things we're working on right now, is having some monitors put into the front doors. So that way all the information is put up there all week. So that way if there's anything changed, anything any place they need to contact, they'll be able to contact through that right there.
Okay.
So, and then it'll probably have the scan codes as well, so they could always scan their camera and,
Right.
and get some more information on it.
I like that idea. Kiosk of information, because I'm finding as a business owner and as a resident, I'm finding it really hard.
Sorry.
That's okay. As a business owner and as a resident, I'm finding it hard to communicate what we offer and what is offered in the community. If Facebook is the only source, not everyone has Facebook. I've talked with Salty Pickle. They think their biggest communication is email. Well, I'm not set up for email yet in business. So, and I'm not receiving local email from, local. So, I do like, as a business owner and as a resident, I like the kiosk idea. And I'm in support of that. I do use the walking, we have a walking club that I've started a couple years now. And every Saturday we walk the 3 miles from my home on Cambridge all the way to Lucille and back. I don't know what other sections, I've never walked the other sections, but one of the biggest issues is the doggy poop bags dropped on the side of the walkway. I literally will find a trash can and take mine and put them in the trash can, or I have a stroller, I throw it in the bottom of the stroller when I have Presley, but I'm not gonna go around picking up other people's doggy poop bags. But having a small trash can just to deposit next to the dispensary of the doggy bags would be nice. But the other things that you mentioned, not really sure how to process that at this time. It's a lot of information. And I don't know how it really relates to me as a business owner and me as a resident yet.
Okay. Just in general, are there any things that you noticed in the community that you think if we had money for something, this is what I would like to see?
I don't. We're gonna send out a survey. Okay, I do like, I've been trying to share the surveys as I see them come through your Facebook page. I don't know. I know as a business owner, my biggest struggle is advertising. I'm right now trying to figure out how to do mailers. How I've got my landlords are real estate agents, and so they're helping me with getting address labels. But I only have a home printer. How am I supposed to print all these flyers efficiently, economically? How, other than I don't want to walk door to door and say, hey, we have a new yoga studio in town, So I think helping businesses advertise. We are up on the marquee, the Kalinga Pride sign, but it's not working right now. So just as we got on to the sign, it went down, and so I'm like, oh, we could be advertising right now. So that, I think, is as a wellness center, you know, we're coming in and we're kind of that in between. We're not a park and recs. We're not a city entity, but we're not a medical office, but we're in that middle gap. And to be able to work with businesses and cities, city offices, and do help with wellness and bring, what's the word I'm looking for? Teamwork, collaboration, and like what you were mentioning with the wellness of the firefighters and your staff. And I know I spoke with your office, Chief, about bringing yoga to the police officers, and how can we incorporate that. So I think if I could, I don't know if funds have anything to do with it, but using local resources like our wellness center and me teaching yoga and wellness things, using local people who have local talent and local training to, instead of outsourcing out of Coalinga, but using your local people who do that, I think would not only boost morale, but also help keep funds local, you know, helping the local businesses with that. And so I am, you know, I've already reached out to Best Western, and I'm reached out to the manager, and I am interested in doing, whether it's a monthly or weekly evening class for their residents. They have a lot of residents who stay on a weekly basis. And if, you know, they have a gym, but if we could bring in a meditation class once a week or 2 times a month, that gives another level of wellness to our community. So just things like that is kind of where my brain is currently at. Thank you.
So I just want to make sure, when I was talking about economic development, and this just add to the list of things that we'll choose from, but economic development coordinator is on that list, and that might also help with the business thing. And if we could have an economic development person, you know, we could spec out later what that would entail. But it could involve services like that. We wouldn't want to take away from local businesses, but right now we have a real need with printing and other things like that you know, no one can do. And so yeah, I just want to make sure that's on the list. And then also, I know you said you had direction, but there's one piece of direction that's kind of unclear at the moment, and that's the sunset. And so I don't know, you know, you've heard from myself, I'm in favor of a sunset because I think it does checks and balances. So I'd kind of like to hear from the rest of the council members to make sure that you have a clear direction on the sunset. That way when we move forward, we know where we're at.
I would just put it in there as if they would they be more likely to vote with a sunset versus without a sunset, and the length of term. So see if it needed to be adjusted.
Yeah, and we could wait to give direction until we hear back from the public on that, if you guys would rather do that. I mean, a survey's obviously not going to cover everyone, but it will give us a good idea of it. For myself, I feel comfortable with the sunset because of the things that Councilman Schindler brought up, where checks and balances are there, and that you have one council now that you may trust, but 4 years from now, you may not trust the next council. You may not trust how, Marissa, she's going to be here forever, 100 years or so now.
Let's hope.
But if we have someone different, like Sean, right? No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. We actually have a really great crew, and so, yeah. But that's my thoughts behind the sunset. And I do think more people are, because I listened to people last time that we were encouraged, and that they were saying, okay, well, if you do a sunset, then I'll do it. You know, so that's where I kind of sit on it, but I would like to hear from the public, and we could wait for that if that's what you're interested in doing.
I'm getting used to this mic. So, on the sunset, I get why we got the sunset. What I want to know is if it sunsets and we don't move further with that and we don't add, continue it, how is that going to the money that's already been used to establish the one-time purchases or the one-time, I was trying to read up on it with the things that they hired and things that they did with it. How is that going to continue? Are we going to lose those things? Okay, so,
Yeah, so those things wouldn't continue. So the one-time purchases, those are already done, but there are ongoing costs because there's positions tied to that money. So, I mean, of course, and I say this a million times, my goal is always to cut from operations as much as we can before we have to touch people. So there may be ways to not cut positions. That's highly unlikely. We may not lose all of them, but we would definitely lose some.
yeah, I think it's important that we don't lose personnel. I think it's important, what we've built in the different departments has really created a more morale and created a safer place to live and a more cohesive place to live. So I do like the funds and what it's provided for the citizens. I understand what you're talking about as far as having sunsets. But again, the money that's tied to having to reestablish a new sunset is a lot of money that could be used elsewhere. So it's a lot of good points.
Yeah, I think, once we have that picture of what we're gonna do with it, that's gonna be huge in convincing people whether to sunset it or not, including me.
Because here's the thing is, even though you have the sunset, we don't want those funds to go away. But we're spending a lot of money to create this sunset safety net, when in actuality, we don't want that money that's been used for these positions to go away. So then why are we wasting the money on creating another sunset?
It's just all checks and balances. That's basically what it is, checks and balances. So if we can figure out a way to have those checks and balances and not sunset it, then, it would make sense to everybody to do it that way. But that's gonna be the whole thing, is the checks and balances.
Yeah, I think most people don't want to be tied down to something. I think that there's just an inherent knee-jerk reaction against that. Like, no, I don't want anything permanent. I want to just come back and revisit this later. So as far as I'm concerned, a sunset is needed, and
Okay.
I think most people would see it that way. But that's what we're going to poll the public for.
And how much,
Revisit.
Yes.
Yeah,
Just to say, hey,
but-
I'm still on
but-
board with this.
the revisit means we have to put it back on the ballot to give it another sunset? And how much money is linked to putting it back on the ballot?
So Fresno County cannot give us a price in advance. So I would say my estimate, my informal estimate, is it's between 10 and 30,000 to place it on the ballot. And it really depends on how many items are on that ballot in Fresno County. It gets divided up by everyone who has a measure on the ballot. But then there's additional costs. And if we're doing this every 10 years, $10,000 over a 10-year period isn't a lot. 30,000 obviously is a little bit more. But then there's other costs like preparing surveys that we're going to mail out. And if we hire a consultant to pull it, with Measure J, I wrote all the material last year, so we don't have to pay a consultant to write the factual information on the tax measure. But there's other costs aside from just placing it on the ballot. We didn't order any Yes on Measure J signs. We can't do that with city money. There was a group that did order some. And so it's really just the cost of placing it on the ballot, and then any surveys that we do, and then we do informational mailers that go out to every residence. And so I would say that was probably like $4,500 when we did it back then. I don't know what the cost has gone up to send a mailer to everyone's home.
Okay.
So I'll just like kind of go over again because you weren't here about the no, you're good. Kind of reemphasize that I didn't hear anybody during the last time around that said, hey, I'm going to vote for Measure J, but if you don't have a sunset, I'm not going to vote for it. But I heard a lot of people that said, if you don't have a sunset, I'm out, I'm not doing it. The first time we tried Measure P, we had no sunset, it failed. Now granted, we had a couple other factors into there, and we had a couple other factors the last time too. I mean, in the first section, you know, we were going to lose people, and we had a prison population or a mental health population that decided to vote. And in the second version, we did lose people, and the people at that encouraged a lot more people to vote. And we did add a sunset in. And so, you know, me, myself, you know, I think the city does a decent job at, and if I could guarantee Marissa was going to be here and Sean was going to be here, and then we'd have a great council. But something that the public really does focus on is that this being a 50+1 is a general fund tax. Even if we put the stuff into the priority list, future city managers from future councils, they don't have to spend it that way. So if you had a 1%, if you had our tax and let's say, you know, you had a sunset, then you get to revisit that again, and the public gets to decide if they trust the people that are there to be able to do it. If not, there is no trust mechanism here, and now they're just angry. And so that's kind of where I sit on it. I understand your point. You have great points, and so does I think Marissa is kind of making those same points that, hey, this is going to cost some money. I look at it. I called the Fresno County last time, and the best information they could give me was it costs anywhere from $35,000 to $40,000 when you're running 2 people plus you put a measure on there. But as she stated, it is a total of the items that are on there and how much it costs for the election, and then they send you the bill of what your share is. So to me, I look at it and say, well, if that's 35,000, if I divide it by 3, that's around, you know, $10,000 that it costs for that. That's not always how it's going to be, though, as she pointed out. Plus, all the money, man work, and power it goes to informing the public, you know, and then taking a chance. So there's definitely pros and cons, and I understand your points definitely for sure, and I don't want to lose anybody here either on this. And that is, if anybody's listening on the internet, this is why that we're putting it up right now. Because if we don't put it up right now and we make the wrong decision and move forward, then we won't have any time to recover. So that's why that's why we're thinking of doing it now, so that if for some reason, you know, this doesn't go through, that we have ample time to try and make changes and try it again. But I agree with your assessments and your opinions. You make really good points.
Shannon.
I can say over the last at least 2 to 4 years, there have been a lot of jurisdictions that have moved to I guess it's an even election cycle, because they used to be staggered from even and odd, and now they're all being lumped in together. So there's a lot more, everyone's on the same ballot, so it's bringing down individual jurisdiction costs.
And that's the other good reason to do it this year, is because the general election has more participation, more people putting things more on the ballot, and so the price will be significantly, hopefully, cheaper than what it would be. But we never know those costs until they tell us. But I really hope the public listening understands, you know, what we're trying to do here, and it's not to bring taxes up. It's actually just to try and it actually in the future will probably save us money because it'll allow our services to be able to plan in the future.
One of the things that the council, and I know they all do, is we refuse to go backwards again. And that's what happened when they tried it the first time and we finally got it through the second time. They had to go backwards before we could even move forward. And if we're catching it now, we can continue to move forward, hopefully. That's the plan. So.
more? Do you have the information? Okay.
I do.
Okay, we'll move on to our next item, city manager's announcements,
I have 10.
councilman announcements, reports.
I have an announcement. About a week ago or so, I went to the Housing and Economic Development for the League of Cities. It was in Burbank. And let me tell you, it's a good thing we're a part of the League of Cities because it was all out war chaos. There were votes going around that people were winning 16 to 25, and that was not in our favor for what I believe the morality of the folks in our general area believe in. And so it was very interesting to attend and to be a part of, to be a member of that. Honored that I could, got a appointment by presidential appointment by PARA to be able to be on that. So I thank him and I thank the city for allowing me to go because it's a great opportunity and we actually have a seat at the table. And the president, the former president was there and she said this, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I like to say that because I've heard that before, so it actually fit. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
While Nathan's thanking everybody, we should actually thank him for being on that committee because that's not the one he originally wanted to be on, but he agreed to be on it.
Any more? Okay, and my announcement is for everybody. Tractor Supply this Saturday at 9 in the morning is doing their big grand opening and ribbon cutting. They will have 20 plus vendors out there as well. So there's going to be something for everybody out there. So be sure to check it out. I'm sure they'll have some special deals or something going on for the first day. So be sure to go check them out. We need to support this business so we can get the rest of them coming. Okay, with that, are there any future agenda items at this time?
I have one. You know, the crime in this town, our police is doing a wonderful job. Unfortunately, our state is not. We just keep getting people let out that are mentally ill. I mean, I think they're mentally ill. Let's put it this way. This is a disclaimer. I believe that some of the people getting let out are mentally ill. And the things that they're willing to do is amazing. Like to go inside of somebody else's house. And so I would like to encourage more people to have CCW permits. And I'd like to have like a CCW holiday to where if you sign up for a CCW permit during a certain period of time that the city cost is waived to encourage those to get them. Because, you know, our town, I believe our town's a safer place when we have trained, honest folk having the ability to protect the citizenry. And so I'd just like to put that up for a discussion.
Any more, council? None? Okay. We have no closed session items tonight. With that being said, we'll adjourn this meeting.